Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. We have a great show for you this week with Pepe Rivera from Mexico City. He has organized a group called Planton 420 that has set up a marijuana garden in front of the national capitol in Mexico City, in front of the Senate, and they've been growing and using cannabis there for over the past 2 years. Recently, they've also moved a garden in front of the Supreme Court of Mexico and also in other cities around Mexico. These gardens are springing up. So stay tuned for a fascinating interview about cannabis and human rights and Pepe Rivera from Planton 420. We have a great hemp news segment for you tonight as well. So stay tuned as we bring on, as we always do, our infamous dancing cannabis leaves.
I feel the force.
First story tonight is from Washington, D.C. 3 Senate Democrats on Wednesday unveiled a discussion draft for a U.S. Senate bill to legalize marijuana at the federal level. Senate Majority Leader Charles Schumer of New York, Oregon's own Senate Finance Committee Chair Ron Wyden, and Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey will introduce a discussion draft of the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act, a Senate proposal. According to a summary of the discussion draft, the legislation will remove the herb from the Controlled Substances Act within 60 days of passage. It'll set up a system to tax cannabis in states that legalize it. The bill will also expunge federal convictions of nonviolent marijuana charges. The plan would implement a series of programs to help communities that have been harmed by the war on drugs. These have disproportionately tended to be communities of color. A community reinvestment program would provide funding to nonprofits to help people incarcerated under harsh marijuana laws. It would also provide such people with reentry services and job training. The Small Business Administration would oversee the development of the other two programs. The first would provide funding to states and localities for loans for small businesses in the cannabis industry. The second would allow licensing programs to reduce barriers to entry in marijuana businesses for individuals. Under their plan, states would be able to write their own marijuana laws. Marijuana would be eliminated from the federal list of controlled substances within 60 days of implementation. The bill would shift jurisdiction from the Drug Enforcement Administration. Most authority would go to the Food and Drug Administration and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. As is the case with alcohol and tobacco, marijuana and its products would be subject to an excise tax. The tax rate would increase over a 5-year period after enactment. It would start at 10% and gradually increasing to 25% after 5 years. But a credit reducing the tax rate by half would be available for marijuana businesses making less than $20 million a year annually. Senator Schumer, the Majority Leader of the United States Senate, told NBC's Today Show in an interview that aired Wednesday morning he's working on getting the votes in the Senate for the legislation. 18 states have already legalized recreational cannabis, and 37 states have legalized medical marijuana. Contrary to the predictions and hysteria of the anti-cannabis forces, the sky didn't fall. Support for legalization has also increased exponentially over the years. Multiple polls show a growing majority of Americans are saying weed should be legal. A Pew Research poll from April showed that 60% of Americans think marijuana should be legalized for recreational and medical purposes. In 1969, just 12% of Americans supported legalization, Gallup polling found. Last year, Gallup measured support at 68%. Oregon Senator Wyden said, quote, "Cannabis prohibition, a key pillar in the failed war on drugs, has caused substantial harm to our communities and small businesses, and especially for communities of color, end quote. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, one of the court's most conservative members, said last month that federal laws against cannabis make no sense. President Joe Biden has previously said he supports decriminalizing marijuana on a federal level. Biden supports leaving it up to states to choose whether to legalize, according to his press secretary Jen Psaki in April. It's now yet clear how much support the bill will garner in the United States Senate. 10 Republican votes, along with all Democrats, must support the bill for it to clear the 60-vote filibuster-proof threshold. You know, I like almost everything about this U.S. Senate proposal except the tax is too damn high. This federal layer of taxation, in addition to state and local cannabis taxes, starts at 10% of a cannabis business's revenue on the first year of enactment and gradually goes up to 25% after 5 years. There's a provision that if your marijuana business grosses less than $20 million a year, then that tax rate could be cut in half. Cannabis should not be subject to the same level of taxation as tobacco and alcohol because it is infinitely safer. And this tax is also in addition to all the other taxes small businesses are subject to. The Marijuana Opportunity, Reinvestment, and Expungement Act, or the MORE Act, which passed last year in the U.S. House of Representatives but didn't get through the Senate with Mitch McConnell in charge, is moving forward this year too and only has a 5% taxation rate. Senator Cory Booker said that he will lay himself down to block any other senators who seek to pass marijuana banking legislation before the body approves comprehensive cannabis reform like the federal legalization bill he unveiled alongside Chuck Schumer. During a press conference on the long-anticipated Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act, Schumer, Booker, and Senate Finance Committee Chairman Ron Wyden from here in Oregon were asked about whether the chamber should pursue a separate House-passed bill that would simply protect banks that service state legal marijuana businesses from being penalized by federal regulators if the trio cannot get enough support to advance their legalization legislation. Booker put the issue in no uncertain terms. He said, quote, "I'm telling you right now, if somebody tries in the Senate to do just a banking bill, it would only accomplish further enriching of people in a multi-billion-dollar industry without addressing the harms of the drug war," end quote. Because of that, Booker said he will block any bills from advancing that singularly address cannabis banking issues. Senator Booker said, quote, "To just do it so some people can get rich and not do something about the people who are languishing with criminal convictions, to not do something on restorative justice, not to make sure that the business opportunities that are created are given a fair playing field, where right now in many states someone who has a criminal conviction for selling marijuana can't get a license now. That is unacceptable. I don't know about other members of the Senate, but I, Senator Booker, would lay myself down to do everything I can to stop an easy banking bill that's going to allow all these corporations to make a lot more money off of this, as opposed to focusing on the restorative justice aspects," end quote, Senator Booker said. President Joe Biden, in the White House, nominated a White House drug czar who previously played a key role in overseeing the implementation and expansion of West Virginia's state medical marijuana program. The official, whose confirmation is now pending by the Senate, has also publicly recognized both the therapeutic and economic potential of cannabis reform. Dr. Rahul Gupta, former chair of the West Virginia Medical Cannabis Advisory Board, who also served as the lead on the drug policy in Biden's presidential transition team, is being selected as the head of the Office of National Drug Control Policy, or the ONDCP. The ONDCP director, commonly known as the drug czar, is explicitly required under statute to oppose efforts to legalize currently controlled substances. Having someone fill that role who's repeatedly touted the medical value of marijuana, saying, for example, that it can, quote, help citizens suffering from debilitating diseases like cancer, end quote, and who's worked to institute a state legal cannabis program that authorizes people to carry out activities that are in contravention of federal law, is a departure from the norm for White House drug czars. The Biden administration touted that fact that Gupta is a medical doctor and argued he can uniquely help lead the nation's drug policy efforts amidst an overdose crisis. Also out of Washington, D.C., the U.S. Department of Agriculture, or USDA, is requesting permission from the White House to conduct a survey of about 20,000 farmers to collect data on hemp production. In a notice published in the Federal Register Thursday, the department said it wants to launch an annual hemp acreage and production survey, and it's soliciting public comment on whether the effort would be useful and how to most effectively administer it and minimize the burden on the respondents. This appears to be a follow-up to a February notice USDA posted on its intent to request the survey from the White House Office of Management and Budget. The title, Hemp Acreage and Production Survey, indicates that it would help inform issues related to the cultivation that the department oversees since the crop was federally legalized under the 2018 Farm Bill. The notice explains that cannabis contains no more than 0.3% THC, is federally legalized, and hemp is, quote, a commodity that can be used for numerous industrial and horticultural purposes, including fabric, paper, construction materials, food products, cosmetics, production of cannabinoids such as cannabidiol and CBD, and other products, end quote. In New Jersey, nearly 88,000 marijuana convictions and pending cases have been vacated or dismissed since July 1st. The New Jersey judiciary announced on Monday. These are the first of up to 360,000 cases in New Jersey and convictions that are eligible for vacation, dismissal, and automatic expungement in the coming months. The actions by the courts follow a state Supreme Court order that provides for the dismissal, vacating, and expungement of certain marijuana and hashish cases involving offenses enumerated in the marijuana decriminalization law, which took effect on July 1st. The order also mandates that the courts establish an electronic system to streamline the automatic expungement process, as well as communicate with members of the public on whether or not their conviction has been automatically expunged. According to the New Jersey judiciary, quote, violations of probation or pretrial monitoring will be vacated, and driver's license suspensions or revocations for failure to appear due to marijuana crimes will be rescinded, end quote. New Jersey is far from the only state to take steps in recent months to expunge tens of thousands of former marijuana convictions. Earlier this year, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker announced that state officials in 2020 expunged the criminal records of an estimated 500,000 Illinois citizens previously convicted of marijuana-related crimes. In California, state officials have also reviewed and expunged several 100,000 past marijuana convictions over the past 2 years. California and Illinois are among more than a dozen states that have enacted legislation explicitly facilitating the expungement of marijuana-related convictions. Here in Oregon, you have to petition the court to have those expunged. Historically, though, New Jersey was among the states with the highest marijuana arrest rates in the country. In Los Angeles County, California, authorities on Wednesday announced the largest cannabis bust in its history. 373,000 plants worth an estimated $1 billion in street value. The 10-day operation led to 131 arrests and more than 33,000 pounds of harvested cannabis. However, the authorities said it represents less than half of the illegal grows in the Antelope Valley, or about 205 out of 500. U.S. Representative Mike Garcia stressed that the law enforcement action, quote, was not a war on legal cannabis businesses in the state, end quote. Los Angeles County Sheriff Alex Villeneuve said the illegal grows were run by cartels that threaten local residents, steal millions of gallons of water, poison streams and groundwater, and harm wildlife and plants with pesticides. He added that the illegal operations are detrimental to the state's licensed cannabis operators. Villeneuve said last year that California agencies seized over 1 ton of cannabis, while this bust alone amounted to more than 16 tons. Our next story is from South Carolina. Joe Cunningham, former Democratic congressman now running to unseat South Carolina's Republican governor, is pushing for medicinal and recreational legalization of cannabis in South Carolina. Cunningham says this would offer healthcare options and spin off millions in tax revenue for state coffers. The gubernatorial candidate said, quote, "This is going to be a game changer in South Carolina. There are so many reasons why we need to do this, and the time is now," end quote. Our last story tonight is from Berlin, Germany. Adolescents with moderate exposure to cannabis show no decline in neurocognitive skills compared to controls, according to data published in the journal Cognitive Development. An international team of investigators from Canada, France, Germany, Ireland, and the United States examined the relationship between adolescent marijuana use at the age of 14 and cognitive performance at the age of 19. The authors determined, quote, "Our data suggests that decision making is not impaired. After controlling for co-founders, we found no evidence of effects of cannabis on the remaining neurocognitive variables such as attention, working memory, short-term memory, and risk-taking," end quote. The authors concluded, quote, "In summary, we find no evidence to support the presumption that cannabis consumption leads to a decline in neurocognitive ability," end quote. The full text of this study, Residual Effects of Cannabis Use on Neuropsychological Functioning, appears in this month's edition of Cognitive Decline. Here in the United States, if you are a loved one, need to find a doctor to help you get a medical marijuana permit, we have a physician referral service. You can call our office at 503-235-4606. That's 503-235-4606. Stay tuned for the interview with Pepe Rivera and work to help restore him. Good night. Introduce Nico Malazartes from Cannativa, which is a Latin American legalization and educational group working in Mexico and Central America and Colombia. And what other countries, Nico?
Well, we're kind of like all abroad Latin America, all over.
Yeah.
From Mexico originally, and that's where headquarters are. But we interact all over Latin America, whereas where Spanish speakers are. Even though there's a lot of Brazilian public that follows us as well, and well, they don't speak Spanish; they speak Portuguese. As myself, I'm Brazilian, right? But
Really?
I've been living. Yeah, I'm Brazilian.
Oh, there.
Yeah, I've been living in Mexico for a long time, and
So
well,
Portuguese
actually,
is
then
first language.
sorry, what was that?
So Portuguese is your first language.
É isso, sim, senhor. Portuguese is my first language, and then I lived. Well, I traveled a lot through Latin America and learned Spanish, and then I lived in California for a while, and then I learned English well better than what they teach us in school, right? Which is the first language they teach us. And then I got to Mexico again and lived through several years, and then I went to Colombia and lived there for a couple of years as well. So now I'm back to Mexico, where well, Cannativa started back in about the end of 2014, and where we gave our first. Well, actually, we set up a Facebook page and started like putting information out that we learned through the years of experience, and that really people here have never heard about a lot of things that we're talking about. So from there came the first workshop we did, which was actually, I did a lot of hashish by then. It was 2014. Uruguay was just legalized, and we're buying a van.
You didn't actually do a lot of hash. You taught people how to make hash, right?
Yeah. That's what was happening. We're building this motorhome, right, to travel down to Uruguay, to live there and buy land there, to grow there, because it was legalized, the first country ever legalizing marijuana. So we were very excited with that. And then I was doing hashish for that, selling a little bit of it, and then getting the parts of the vehicle that I needed to build. And then there was people that were coming in and we're asking for medicine, right, for extracts, for oil, and hash oil. And I was like, okay, I can give you some oil. And then they were trying out, and they were really good, and they wanted more. So I was just like, okay, so what do you think that I teach you how to do it, and teach you everything I know and how to like use it, and then you do it yourself, and I will connect you with people that I know that grow good weed, right, and not pesticide or mountain narco shit. And then
So this is in Uruguay?
I know that was Mexico, because we were building the van, right? We were building the van to go and travel to Uruguay. But then, in meanwhile, we were building it. Then we have to survive, right? And I was doing this hash thing to like get the parts of the vehicle, like get the vehicle ready, and then that happened. And then from the first workshop we did, it was a like large, like 18-hour thing, 2 days in a row where we like taught everything really.
When was your first workshop?
Oh, that was by the end of 2014, by the beginning of 2015. I think it was the end of 2014. And that was really like something new, like never, people wouldn't even talk about even, well, hash oil or Rick Simpson. They didn't even know jack shit. Some of them were like doing oil extractions and selling them as CBD, because people thought it was like, oh, it's liquid and it's oily and it's medicinal, so it's probably CBD. They didn't really know what was the difference of it. It was, I mean, there was really low diffusion of knowledge or education about that. And then we started like teaching people how to like dilute it in oil, like in olive oil or coconut oil, and you know the concentrations and the proportions of how many milligrams of oil will be like diluted, and how many milliliters of coconut in the vehicle, and the dosages, and to take care, you know, and this and that, and extract yourself and know how to identify a good flower so you don't get fooled by the black market. A lot of people were being fooled by then, like people with cancer and people with a family that were suffering for diabetes or pain, or the most common thing by then was the epilepsy. There were a lot of like famous cases of child epilepsy. So there are a lot of people that didn't really know about it, and the people that know about it, that knew something about it, knew very little. So we started doing that, and then from the one went to another, and then went to another and another, and then it was like it was taking like different specializations, and then I started teaching hash, and then I started teaching to grow, and then I started teaching like these different disciplines of it, and then we started like being a reference, because then we started appearing on a lot of TV stations and reports, and how to say that news, right? And there was Vice News, there was Al Jazeera, there was different local famous TV stations that came in, and they wrote about us, and they made videos of us, and then all of a sudden there was this name, right, Build, and then there was like many other projects started doing the same thing, and then it became like one thing that's been doing since then. And right now, well, a lot has changed, but actually not really. Like the thing is that the optimism and the movements of the legal, not legal, let's say the more formal cannabis industry started happening in Mexico in different steps. A lot of people started doing their own medicine and selling their products. They were doing it with the extracts they were doing. And then right now there's a lot of people, different people doing that stuff, but there's not really none doing it legally, except the people that are bringing it imported from the U.S. and that has they have a personal permit. Well, it's not personal, like a moral institution permit to like sell, which is really something funky that's permitted in a off a record trial that was made. And then there's two companies that passed that in the last period of presidency. And right now in this period of presidency, none has been approved like in that process, but people are still being allowed to cultivate and consume their own medicine by that trial, that exactly same trial, but made out personally, not to sell, right? The same kind of thing, and that made a precedent back in 2000. What was it? 2016, I think it was the first 4 consecutive cases that were admitted. And then since then, this 4 first Mexican citizens that got this permit, there is probably right now more than 5,000 people that have that same permit right now. So in about the 5-year period. So what happened back then is that the federal court admitted that it was not logical to maintain that prohibition, and once more than 4, actually 5 people had individually being permitted that. So
Yeah.
so
Understanding is that the Mexican Supreme Court ruled 5 different times that marijuana was a human right or a natural right, that
well,
and that marijuana prohibition violated individuals' natural human rights. And
yeah,
once they did that 5 times, then they ordered the Mexican legislature, which is a bicameral 2-house legislature like the United States, to legalize and regulate marijuana. And they've been through several deadlines that they've given the legislature. I know
exactly.
the Senate passed a bill, but the House of Deputies, which is like our House of Representatives, they wouldn't pass the same bill. And I think the Chamber of Deputies passed a bill too, but they haven't passed the same bill or reconciled them. It's my understanding.
No, there's been different bills about the medicinal uses and personal uses and different approaches of it, and none of it has been really, really regulated. There is a permit of research right now going on, but there's none really for production and another final end. But there's a lot of gray market happening, and really is not being repressed. But then what happened right now, a week ago, about a week ago, was that
the Supreme Court had some ruling. I wanted to get your take on what that new change is.
Yeah, what happened was that the Supreme Court came down and said that after what happened from the deputy chamber, that it didn't pass that, then they said, well, it's off already the time where we had the commitment of putting together something that regulated that, and then so they invalidated the prohibition itself, right? It's like saying the prohibition, it's not permitted, it's prohibited. It's prohibited to prohibit marijuana. So, but that has to, so that's historical, right? That's very interesting that it happened, but it doesn't really, in the daily basis, changes anything right now, really.
It's good, but it's not good enough, and it doesn't go far enough.
Yeah, what they're saying is that, well, we have to come up with something to like do something with this, and you guys have done nothing. So this is not that doesn't make sense anymore. But then that has to be published in the official diary, and then that has to be forward to the people that are gonna like be doing and the next legislating about it, basically. So what happens in the practice, what seems to have changed or to be changed in the next few months at least, is that once the person about 5,000 person I just told that has a personal permit to like cultivate and consume for themselves, not to distribute or sell or share or anything else, they had to pass through a legal process of asking the regulatory organ to have that permit to consume, and then the organ said no, and then the person had to go off again and say recur to that. I don't know if that word in English, but they appeal, and then you start a process and when the appeal, and then that process would last for about 6 months to a year, and then that person would eventually be permitted of doing that. But that wasn't guaranteed either. That the person could lose the process because it depends on what you put as your argument. So what would happen right now is that that organ could not or should not be able to say no to people anymore. They should instantly emit the permit for the person that asks. But what really happens in practice, and what people are thinking is going to happen for the next weeks or months, is that that organ is not going to be responsive. They're not going to say anything. They're just going to receive and make themselves ways, as they say here, like just pretend nothing happened.
I see. They'll drag their feet is another expression to slow it down even more. Right.
Yeah. That's about it.
So what do you think will happen next? Do you have any clue, or do you think tell us about your president? He opposes that. It's kind of like here in America, our new president opposes marijuana legalization. Even though his party is in favor of it, he opposes it. Biden opposes it. And is it that way in Mexico, where the party that the president represents supports marijuana legalization, but he opposes it? And his name's Lopez Obrador, I believe.
Yeah, Lopez Obrador. He is he has never really manifested conclusively about it. He's more like the popular kind of like leader. He doesn't really give straight answers to stuff, but his position is not really clear. He's not. He have left that in hands of the Senate and the deputies, and they have manifested. Several of them have manifested of being in favor. Actually, I think there's more political will to pass the bills than to resist to it. But there's some strange underground forces that make it so that it's not really legal yet for people to get in before somebody discovers the way of keep having that economy for themselves. That's what I think.
That's what we've had happen in America, is that a group of people backed by the tobacco companies and George Soros have gone to state trying to establish the business for themselves as much as possible. And I think these same people are working in Colombia and Mexico and throughout the world to try to monopolize this market. And it seems like that's happening in Mexico as well.
That sounds about right. Yeah. It's really, well, it really comes down to Mexico, right? I mean, it's the country where the narco has been ruling for so long, and it all started with the marijuana business. It's not really a marijuana business right now. Mexican narco, they don't really get most of their finances through that, but that was really important once. And they're, politicians all have been bought through that drug war in Mexico. So it's really obvious, by the end, but it's also like people are doing it. People are doing it, selling it. Their bazaars, their shops. There's legal selling of pure CBD from that company that I mentioned that has the private permit, but there's a lot of people selling in the street and they're not being repressed. Most of them, people that are being repressed are people that smoke joints out in the street virtually, and then they get busted by the police that want some money for themselves to use it as a bargain and means of negotiation for how do you say that, bribe? Yeah.
Right.
So that's what's really happening.
In Mexico, have you been subject to this kind of shakedown, or have you had any? Do you feel like threatened by the narcos or the police or anything working for marijuana legalization and teaching people about how to grow and make cannabis product?
Well, it has been really, really chill for ourselves. We had a lot of scare once, and but we were slowly opening up, and as we saw, a bunch of people were doing really the same thing, or even copying us, and even going more. How do you say that? More popular, more less underground than us.
Yeah,
They were not mainstream, yeah, and they were
yeah.
not really getting any repression all the way around. They were getting a lot of people in, um, so we didn't really like our organization. We had never had really problems with law in that sense. We took care of ourselves as well, but we didn't really have any bad encounters. Though I individually have had several unpleasant encounters with law enforcement and officers, and yeah, eventually I had to pay off my liberty.
You got to pay a bribe.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I paid to a police officer. I pay for a judge. I pay for supposedly, allegedly, the state. I even did that in several more countries in Latin America, and even the U.S. I had problems in the U.S., but I didn't really have to pay anything. But yeah, well, maybe officially you have to pay a ticket or fine, or you have to pay the policeman, but at the end you have to pay. I have already had some time in jail. Well, a few days incarcerated because of that as well here in Mexico. And but yeah, that's
Altogether, I've spent about 8 months in jail. The longest stretch was about 5.5 months one time. But
yeah, yeah.
if I went through a trial back in 1993, if I had been found guilty, I would have got a 10-year mandatory minimum sentence. But I admitted I had done everything I was accused of, and the jury ruled in my favor, even though I said I did it. The jury decided the law is wrong. We call that jury nullification, where the jury the law.
That's wow. That's dramatic turnaround, eh? That was really nice, man. I'm happy for that.
They had offered me a 5-year mandatory minimum sentence in federal prison here in Oregon, and I went to trial. So they said I was going to get 10 years, and I was going to be incarcerated as soon as the jury came back and found me guilty. And so I wrote an article about it, and it's been republished a lot, advocating the power of the jury to rule against a law.
That's the name of the article?
No, it's called How FIJA, F-I-J-A, How FIJA Saved My Life. So if you go to Google and you look up How FIJA, F-I-J-A, Saved My Life. And FIJA is an acronym, stands for Fully Informed Jurors Act. And so it's How FIJA Saved My Life.
All right.
So it tells it in more detail than I could tell right now.
Yeah, I want to know that story better. So yeah, I'll get to that article for sure.
Yeah, or I'll send you a link. Our audience can look it up. I've talked about it a lot on this show over the years. So that happened back in December of '93 for me. So a ways back, almost 30 years.
Yeah.
But I know what it's like to have them put you in their system for marijuana. And I was actually an activist before that, though. I was arrested because I was an activist primarily. So a lot of people become activists after they're arrested, but did a little backwards there. Anyway, so you're teaching these classes with Cannativa. So you're teaching people how to grow, how to make hash. Are there other things you teach them about the law? I know I came to Huerto Verde, Roma. Is it Huerto Verde?
Yeah.
Roma?
Yeah, Huerto Roma Verde.
Puerto Roma
Exactly.
Verde.
Yeah, it
It's an
just changed.
area that was destroyed by an earthquake, and it's been rebuilt by the local community. You want to tell our audience about that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a wonderful place here in Mexico City, in the downtown Mexico City, that has been, as you said, destroyed by an earthquake back in the 80s, and then that stayed abandoned for a while, for a few years. And it was a very large piece of the downtown area. It's several blocks, and then these people came in and cleaned everything up, and then they started building this marvelous eco village kind of thing, where there's an community environment for people to grow and educate themselves about the nature and the eco buildings and the natural practices and natural medicine and gatherings and plants and gardens and everything. And it's a pretty amazing place where we did that gathering once, where you came down. We had the pleasure of having you here, and
It was
and
great, great, and it was great seeing the eco village. I just love that. It's an amazing place, and I know you guys have done other events there. Seen videos and things, so you do things there pretty frequently with Canativa.
yeah, we love that place. For us, is like really a sanctuary in the middle of Babylon, sort of saying it is really, you're walking by and it's all gray and buildings and everything, and then there's this like super forestry eco village thing in the middle of the city. So there you even breathe better there. You hear the birds, you hear, you connect again with nature in the middle of the city, which is amazing, right? So, and they've been fighting the municipality over that territory and over what they do, and that's been also a mark of like resistance for the people's place, right? To have that, and we've been around them, like supporting them as they support us in our events there, and we've been talking nowadays with them, and we're building a place where people could smoke, like being around, and they can get in, everybody can get in there, and you can get into a place to smoke freely and don't have to worry about anything, in the middle of nature, which is really what we want, right? And
So that's
also we're
Puerto Roma Verde. It's kind of an open smoking cannabis area.
it's not,
No.
it's a gathering area for a bunch of different activities for the community, but not really for smoke. We're going to build a specific place in there for people that want to go there and smoke. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. And we're also going to put a garden there for that community, for that community consumption, which they have about 4 or 5, they have more than 10 different people with that personal permit that I just mentioned. So they're gathering all these people so that they can have like kind of this formal civil association thing where they can cultivate and consume over there.
Okay. So
Well, that's,
like
yeah.
what's happening near the Senate at the national capital in a different part of Mexico City. I think it's called Planton 420. Can you
Yeah,
tell our
that's,
audience about that?
of course, that's a very interesting situation as well, where people have organized to protest for their civil rights of consumption and production of cannabis. And that's been done for several years now. Actually, it's different people have passed through that protest in front of the Senate. By the time I got to Mexico for the first time, it was a group that gathered there once a month, and then they smoked weed freely in front of the Senate, and they put together a small tent thing, and gave people information and stuff.
What year
And
was that?
that
What year did
was
you do that?
was back in like 2013 or something.
Okay, about 8 years ago.
Yeah, about 8 years ago, and then that evolved to several different organizations or organizational people that passed through there. And then a few years ago, about 3 years ago, or I'm not sure exactly when, they've made that new planton thing, which was initially a camp in front of the Senate of those same smokers, but then they got each day more confident, and step by step they started putting seeds there, and seeds started growing. They started taking care of plants, and the plants grew, and now there's a huge growing area over there in front of the Senate of cannabis, and there's a lot of people that are camping there. There's a huge camp, and there's several people that pass through in the middle of the day, and they surprisingly are not repressed to smoke cannabis in there. It's a protected place, so it's very interesting that as well. People have they've conquer that territory, as so to
It's like
speak.
speech, public protest, or civil disobedience is another word that's taking place right on the Capitol for a long time now, right? It's more than a year and a half or something.
That's right. Yeah. Well, it's definitely more than a year. It was happening already before the pandemic, so it was probably 2 years, over 2 years now. Or
Right.
actually, not exactly
And
sure.
law enforcement has kind of cooperated with the group, is my understanding.
Well, there has been histories of some abuses, but mainly there's been a victory of the people there. Actually, that's been a really conquer.
What do you have on your plate next? What do you see as, I know we've had Polita Pepper here on the show a few months ago, and she talked about Canativa's work. You guys have been pushing this forward. You've done classes together and separately under Canativa. Are there other people that do Canativa presentations, or what's going on with you?
Yeah, well, we started that together, and back then in 2014, and there's been all these years, right, where we've been growing as an education reference, and besides giving the workshops and the courses, start giving diplomates and a little bit more sophisticated kinds of like ways of education, and we started publishing a lot throughout the Canativa media portals. I'm a video maker, and we're content creators of all sorts. So we started using that knowledge also to create some infographics, videos, and documentaries, and etc. And that has been also a main part of our project. And well, right now there's this demand for education for people, right? And then there's going to be all this demand once this is all started officially for capacitation or for training of professionals. So that's an interesting place to be where we're at right now. Not really doing great because like legality of things, and it takes some years for people to realize what's happening, and also education. It's not really a selling profitable market as like selling weed for itself, or another kind of product, cannabis product. Well, actually, the education has been conflictive as a profitable business for people alongside the history. I think it's kind of underestimated for a long time, and that has been a conflict that has been happening here. We've been checking out, but that's where we're at right now. That's what we're doing, and we have some different projects going on. Like we've been working with the advisory and transfer of technology for indigenous communities, working in cooperatives to grow cannabis. And for example, the state of Oaxaca, I've been working there for a while now already, actually, and it's been happening over there in an interesting way. People been growing weed for a long time, for decades, and they've now been able to be inserted in the formal market, and they are not willing to wait when the big industries and pharmacies have mastered and have dominated the market. So we're pushing it through with that cooperative thing, and that's also kind of a civil disobedience in a certain way, but working on permits and everything. So that's been an interesting project to work on as well. People can see that in our web pages, a lot of that, what's happening. We're also been publishing like documentaries about that same matter in Colombia. There's a small short documentary that was made by us back in 2016, I think it was, where we shot these people, where it was 2017. It was just legalized, regulated, sorry. And there was all these like euphoria as well, together with the peace agreements that had brought a little more peace to territories before the new presidency came along and shit all over that. But then there was a possibility of talking with all that FARC dominated territories before that were opening themselves for different people and initiatives. And the indigenous there were aware of what was happening with cannabis and wanted to get in. They actually have several cooperatives over there. But then by that time, we had a chance to get in and shoot a lot of their lifestyle and what they wanted to do, and that was what we published. So people could watch that, like for instance, in our YouTube channel, and two other pieces of documentary and educational audiovisual videos that teaches different things.
On YouTube under Cannativa?
Right, yeah, Cannativa, YouTube, Cannativa, Facebook, Cannativa, Instagram, that's double N, right? As cannabis, so Cannativa. Yeah, people can basically find us in all social networks, and as well as the website, cannativa.net, and that's where we announce what we're doing right now.
Okay, great. Well, if anyone wants to reach out to Cannativa and work with them throughout Mexico, Colombia, and the rest of Latin America, then just reach out to both Nico Malazartes and Polita Pepper and the Cannativa team, right?
Right.
Do you have a website or a URL outside of the social media, like
right.
MX or something, or?
Exactly. Yeah, that's cannativa.net. That's our website. Yeah.
All right, that makes sense. All right, Nico. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. Is there anything else you'd like to say in closing?
Well, I'd like to thank you a lot, Paul. I like to thank you for being the person that you are and doing the things that you did, and living through all of that stuff, and really participating in doing what you believe it should be done, and admitting that in front of a court, and participating in all those moments that have been really decisive, important moments of change for us, and everywhere in the world. Everything we do repercutes. And also thank you for going down south with all this curiosity you have, and will to share to people what you came down to share several times with us. We have the joy to have you, first of all, to listen to you and learn from you and all your experience, and then also have you explain to us, to our public, what several different things about cannabis, and that's been really enlightening as well. And but most of all, the will to come down and share, and besides of any other ambition or anything, just share and know what people are doing down here, and for inviting us to speak in this channel of yours and for your public, and giving us a chance to speak as well. So that's really nice of you, man. And I really appreciate that. I really take that as an inspiration for myself and for what we're doing here, which is, I think, the most important thing in this world and in this cannabis world, right? I mean, the cannabis plant is bringing very good people together to work on things that have to be changed in this world. And I think just to thank life for that, and for this opportunity of doing some with this in this lifetime that I really didn't think it was happening like 15 years ago, but it's happening. So that's also something to appreciate and fight, a good reason to fight for. So yeah, this is what we're doing here in Mexico and in Brazil and in Latin America for Spanish-speaking countries and Portuguese-speaking countries and Spanish-speaking people in the U.S. and Spanish-speaking people all over the world, and also maybe have the chance to also change some and beyond, beside and beyond, and leave a little contribution for all of this history that's happening right now. So just thank you, Paul, and hope to really meet you very soon and share your volcano and your flowers again. It would be wonderful.
I look forward to that for sure. Well, thank you, Nico, and I appreciate your good work and being out there and educating people and carrying the truth about cannabis to all the communities out there. It's my honor to get to meet you and work together for the periods we have, and I hope there are more in the future. So thanks for doing it, Nico. And remember, keep working to restore hemp.
That's what we're doing, man. Thank you for teaching us and sharing with us that experience as well. And let's share that with everybody that really wants to listen and change this. Yeah, we need to change stuff, man.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, man.
Night, man. Peace out. Good to see you.
You too, bro.
Thank you.
I want to tell y'all a little bit about a plant I know that can save the world. It grows long and tall and has flowers that can make your heart swirl. It's a funky plant with a pocket that is resistant to rain and mold. It's the strongest plant fiber known to man, the best rope you'll ever hold. With the pioneers coming up the wagon trains with a canvas made of hemp. Washington and Jefferson grew on their farms and said to make the most of it. The first stars and stripes are sold from him, the first Constitution too. Around the world for food, fiber, oil, medicine, and fuel. And if we bring the seeds, we won't have no need for any other oil. We can make paints and things, run our cars, put it back next season. It'll mix the soil, the most nutritious seeds we can put in our mouth. With omega-6 and 3, we can feed the world with the tree of life and live sustainably. But if we